Welcome to the final episode of Series 2 of Foraging and Feasting with us here at the Family Foraging Kitchen. And we would like to say a huge thank you to everyone at the National Lottery, firstly for funding this great series of films, and also everybody who has worked with us on the box scheme, on the films, and everyone watching. It's just been a phenomenal project. Thank you so much. We are here in May. We are going to explore 5 of the best seasonal wild edibles that we have growing on Maker Heights on the Rain Peninsula in southeast Cornwall. And then today really is for me a thank you for everyone that's worked with me. So I want to create a sort of a feast, really, a feast for my friends. And when I think of a feast, I want to have cake and I want to have booze. Now, we are still very much in a crisis in Britain. We have rising levels of food insecurity. We have people with no money. We have people not feeding their children, going without heat, going without cooking, relying on food boxes. And it shouldn't be happening in this day and age. And part of what we do in this project is teach people how to find sustainable, free, nutritious wild food. Now, part of that is that recently there's been a lot of press to say that if you have little or no income, you shouldn't be frivolous with your money, you shouldn't be able to have a celebration, you shouldn't be able to have anything nice to eat or nice to drink, because you should be frugal. Now, frugal can mean many things. It could mean you live off beans and you live off soup. It could mean that you know how to shop accordingly so that you can spread your budget and still give your family and friends a wonderful gourmet feast. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. We are going to be making some really sexy wild cocktails, and we're going to be making a beautiful, decadent, wildly decorated cake, which I'm going to serve to my friends. So stick with me. We'll take you through 5 of the best plants, and we are going to have a gourmet celebration. So here we are with the first beautiful wild edible of May, and it is one of the most emblematic flowers that we have in the countryside at this time of year. And of course I'm talking about these wonderful pink flowers behind me, known as the red campion. Now if I just come down and pull a campion flower off its stalk to show you to camera, these little flowers here have what we call a bladder at the back of the flower. Now the bladders of a campion, unlike us who hold waste product, hold a sweet nectar. And if you pull a campion flower off and you bite into it and it's sweet as candy, it means you have beaten the pollinators and beaten the bees. If you take a campion flower and you pop that into your mouth and it tastes like nothing, it means the bees and the pollinators have been there before you, taken all of that sweet nectar out and gone off on their merry way. And of course, we do not mind sharing with the bees, but when we get a sweet one, we are in for a treat. Now, you can only eat the flowers on the red campion. That is because it contains something called saponins. And the clue there is within the word. They contain a soap-like chemical. In fact, so much so that if you're camping and you've forgotten to bring your laundry detergent or you've forgotten to bring anything to wash the dishes, if you were to dig up a campion root and boil it in water, you would get a soapy lather, which is really good for cleaning things. But obviously, that's not something that you want to ingest. Now, oh, that one's just blown away in the wind, so I'll pull another one off. Now, it is said not to eat the leaves. However, in northern Italy, they do boil the leaves and consume them, but I've never eaten the leaves. That's not something that I suggest you go out and do. What I want you to concentrate on at the moment are these beautiful flowers. Now, we're going to do a couple of things with these flowers when we get back into the dome and do some cooking. We are going to be putting them into a coconut yogurt frosting to go on a beautiful cake. We're also going to be crushing them in a sugar and putting them around the rim of cocktail glasses. So they're a great floral sweet treat to have when we're doing exciting bakes and exciting drinks for friends and family. There isn't really anything that you can get confused with. They all look like this, these beautiful little 5-petaled heart-shaped flowers, and each individual petal looks like a little heart. So you've got the bladder on the back, little tiny hairs all over, and then these heart-shaped petals running around the flower. Beautiful little red campion, number 1 on our edible journey this season. Number 2 on our list today then is a plant that was brought here from Japan and Korea, and it likes to have its feet in sandy soil, and we are really lucky on the Rain Peninsula on the coast that we have plenty of these beautiful Rugosa rose bushes. Now, the Rugosa rose is a really distinct, aromatic, beautiful rose which has flavours akin to Turkish delight, so much so that you can make a very easy Turkish delight jam or Turkish delight liqueur using just the the petals of this rose. Now the word rugosa means wrinkled, and you can see that by the wrinkly pattern on the leaves. It's like the crinkles around my eyes, the crinkly leaves, rugosa. That's what it literally translates to. Now in Japan they call these hanumashi, which literally translates to beach pear. The reason being that when these come into their beautiful red lantern rose hips, they can be as large as pears in some cases, and they are sweet and eaten just like a fruit. Now, I also eat them like a fruit, but I like to eat them like tomatoes. They look like cherry tomatoes. When you slice them open and take out the seeds, you can put them onto your pizza bases, you can put them onto your ciabattas, your bruschettas. They are absolutely beautiful. But now is not the time for the rose hips. Now is the time for these gorgeous fragrant petals. Now you know when you get a rugosa, not just by the wrinkled leaves, but when you pull out the petals and you bring that to your nose, it's unmistakably so strong of Turkish delight. The Victorians used to like to put these petals in sandwiches, so white bread, butter, little sprinkle of sugar, and that will be eaten with a cup of tea. I'm going to put these onto our cake. I'm also going to mash these, infuse them with sugar and make a very simple syrup, which I'm going to add to some gin and also to some vodka, soda water, and I'm going to rim the glass with something special, and that's going to be one of my fabulous wild cocktails to serve to my friends at the end of the show today. So do look out for these wonderful rugosa roses all bursting into flower now, and the hips will be ready towards the end of the summer. So do come and enjoy the season. Hanumashi beach pear. So here we are, crouched down next to the magnificent number 3 today, and that is the cow parsley. Now cow parsley is in that family of plants, the umbellifers, the umbellifers, the carrot family, and you'll know from previous films that I talk a lot about this family of plants. Within this family are 2 very poisonous species that will kill you. They are the hemlocks, and so we need to make certain that what we have here is a beautiful edible plant and not something that's going to make you look really stupid when you're found on the front page of the Daily Mail. So let us have a look at this plant. Let us know how we can distinguish this from hemlock. Now cow parsley is one of the first to flower in the hedgerow. We get these beautiful white umbel flower heads, and actually now we're in May and they're just starting to go to their little seeds. Now, the first thing we need to do when we come to identify this plant is to look at the stem. So I'm going to cut a little piece of the stem, like this, and I'm going to have a really close look at it because I can see now that it's covered in a very fine downy hair. It's almost like the fine downy hair that you get on the back of a baby when they're first born. It's barely there, but it is. If you struggle to see that fine downy hair, you need to do some extra identification steps. It's really useful as well to carry a small pocket lens or hand lens when you're out in the field so you can get close up and spot them for yourself. The second identification with cow parsley is when you cut the stalks and you want to get a clean cut, so you want a nice sharp pair of scissors, you can see that it's not a complete circle. It's not got a complete hollow going all the way through it. It's actually, when you turn it on its side, more like the shape of the letter D, a capital D. The other thing with cow parsley is that it's got no spotting. So cow parsley has this fluffy downy fur and it can quite often be tinged purple. Sometimes they're pure purple, but there's no flecked spotting. When we look at hedge hemlock, it's like someone's got a paintbrush, dipped it in a pot of red paint and flicked it like a Pollock painting, and it's all up the stalk. So there's no spotting on my stems at all. They're hairy, they're ridged, and I've cut a hole and I can see it's not a perfect cylinder. Another clue with cow parsley is the smell. I always say that foraging is not just about our eyes, but all of our senses, and such an important one of those is your nose. So what does cow parsley smell like? Well, if I cut another stalk, a younger, more supple stalk, and I bring that to my nose, what I'm getting is the smell of a cross between aniseed and celery. It's a sweet, pleasant, aromatic smell. And in fact, cow parsley is often known as a wild chervil. So if you know what chervil smells like, which is in the same family of plants, the smell of this is very similar. So what do I want this cow parsley for if it could be so easily confused with something poisonous? It is a beautiful, delectable, wild edible. It's so underrated, it's so underused, and I'm going to do 2 things today for our cocktails. Number one is I'm going to be crushing these beautiful little seeds. Now, cow parsley seeds almost look like little skinny long noses, individual noses, and then on the end of those there are two tiny little eyes with two tiny little antennae, almost like little beetles, and I'll bring that to camera and show you close up in a moment. But when you crush these in your fingers and you smell, you're getting the aniseedy like flavour, and that's going to give us notes of like Pernod or what's that other one in France? Pastiche, like a pastiche flavour to the cocktail. But also, I want to do something really funky for my guests and something they're not going to expect at all. I want to make my own straws. You can go to the supermarket, you can buy plastic straws, you can buy paper straws, you can buy bamboo straws, metal straws. Why not come out into the wild and get them for free? Very simply by taking a thick part of the cow parsley stem. So we're looking at a bigger piece at the bottom. We're going to chop it like that. And then we've got a hole all the way through, which makes a really delicious drinking straw. Now we can tidy that up very quickly and easily with a knife, just peeling off the very outer bark. And there we have a lovely straw for the top of our cocktail. So that is number 3, our beautiful cow parsley with our aniseed seeds and our free drinking straw. So we've got our pink blossoms, we've got our Turkish delight flavours, we've got our free straws, and we've got our aniseed. And now I want to look to something which is prolific in our hedgerows at the moment. There are so many different varieties, but the most common that you'll find is the spearmint. Now, spearmint is something that you smell normally before you see it, and I'm just going to pick some out. So it's pickled all in here amongst the brambles. We've got lots of brambles and nettles under my feet, and if I look down carefully, I see these spears just sticking out, and it's where it gets its name, spearmint, because the leaf shape are said to resemble the edges of spears. Now, this has been recorded in history ever since the 1st century, when there is reference of it in the Bible, and it was brought into Britain in the 5th century by the Romans, and then it was used commonly as a toothpaste and a breath freshener, and still very much is today. If you have halitosis or you have bad breath, chewing a mint leaf is great. Forgotten your toothbrush when you're camping? Look for the mint in the hedge. It's also great for nausea, for headaches, for fatigue, and it's said to be a really important plant for calming anxiety. So if you suffer from anxiety or you suffer from panic attacks, it's a really good idea to start drinking mint tea. Sounds crazy, sounds obvious, but it really does work. 3 or 4 cups a day, spread out through your day, you'll notice a sense of calm. I'm not doing anything for anxiety today, although I'm a little bit anxious that my guests are going to like my cocktails and my cake, but I'm going to turn this into a beautiful syrup for cocktails. There are loads of cocktail recipes that use mint. I've got a favourite, and I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to do it back at the Cookery Dome. So this is number 4 on our list, the beautiful spearmint. So here we are then, the very final edibles from this season, from this show, and they give us the most beautiful aesthetic colour that we're going to put into our dishes in the cookery back in the dome. And we're looking now at the blues and the purples, pinks, yellows and whites, all rolled in together of these 2 flower species here. Now the first one I'm going to talk about are these absolutely beautiful, tiny little forget-me-nots. Now, forget-me-nots are a common invasive weed in many people's gardens. They like to grow in the borders of allotments, and I often see older people pulling these out and putting them into the compost. I always say to people, never weed, always harvest. There is something wonderful about these plants. They brighten up any cupcake, any jelly. You can put them into ice cubes in your ice cube trays. They're a lovely thing to have just sprinkled through a salad, even on top of roast potatoes. When you take them straight out of the oven, sprinkle some forget-me-nots on the top. You won't look back. Now, these have a really interesting history. They're actually, the word forget-me-not comes from the German vergiss-mein-nicht. Probably said that wrong, but basically it comes from a German folk tale. It's said that a German couple were walking along a riverbank, and he was a knight, so he was wearing heavy armour. The woman looked down and looked at these beautiful little blue flowers and said, "Aren't they wonderful?" And he bent down to pick her a posy. His armour was too heavy, and he plopped and fell into the water. Now, as he did so, he held out his arm to give her the flowers, and he said, "Forget-me-not" in German, vergiss-mein-nicht. And that's where that word comes from. Now, in this country, we have more gentle, soft folk tales about these. We give them to loved ones so they don't forget us. They're a symbol of true love, and they were often put on people's graves when they passed away as a reminder of their souls and their gentle nature. So they're a lovely, beautiful little springtime May edible, and we're going to put these on top of our cake, giving a load of colour and just aesthetic beauty to the dish. Right next to the forget-me-nots, we have another little blue flower. Now, I think they're blue. Some people see a purple kind of tone. It really depends on your eyes, I suppose, and the light. Sometimes they look more blue if the sun is shining directly on them. And inside these flowers, there are little prongs, like little antennae that come out of the top. And these are known as speedwells. Now, there are lots of different kind of speedwells that we get growing in meadows. This is a germander speedwell. The leaves and the flowers are edible. They don't really taste like much. A lot of these little blue flowers don't taste like much at all. They just give you that colour splash that you need to make something look exciting. And as you can see, they're in abundance, so we can pick quite a few and work with them easily in the kitchen. The final thing I want to show you is we've got these amazing stalks of red just coming right up the middle here. Now, this is a time of year when it's really easy to spot common sorrel. Now, we've spoken about common sorrel in a couple of our episodes. You can go back and check out those films. It's not the leaves that I'm looking for today as such, but these beautiful red bobbled flowers. These are actually the flower of sorrel. They're like little tiny lint balls when you look at them close up, but I'm going to pull some of those off and I'm going to sprinkle them around the edges of my cake, giving a real contrast, almost like a Pollock painting. It's going to be a work of art. I am actually going to use some leaves. I tell a lie, because I'm going to pull some of these leaves off. I'm going to crush them up, infuse them with sugar, and I'm going to rim that on some of the cocktail glasses. And that's going to give that sharp lemon appley flavour when you take a sip of the drink. So it's quite exciting. We can do lots of work with these edible plants. It's common sorrel flowers, common sorrel leaves, germander speedwell, and of course our beautiful little forget-me-nots. So here we are back at the cookery station, and today we are in a beautiful dome lent to us very kindly by our friends up here called Wilder Me. And if you've never heard of Wilder Me, they're a wonderful endeavour. They run autistic retreats here on Maker Heights in these wonderful domes. Really great people. Do look them up, Wilder Me. And they've let us use this wonderful space for our kitchen. And hopefully they'll come along later and enjoy one of my cocktails and a slice of cake. So here we are then. I really want to treat my friends. I want to make them something special, but I've hardly any money. And according to the government, I should be eating a can of beans. Well, no, I refuse. We're going to have some fun today. So what do I have on my bench? Well, I have been to the shops and I have bought the cheapest, the very cheapest alcohol that I can for my money. So I have a supermarket own brand gin. I have a supermarket own brand vodka, supermarket own brand vermouth, and I have some very cheap basic soda water. Now, if you're having a party, that's probably the cheapest way to make big jugs of cocktails for your guests. And we're going to pimp them out and make them into something stunning that would look like you went to a high-end cocktail bar. The other thing that I've done is I wanted to give everyone a really umptuous slice of cake. Now, you can do that very inexpensively. Eggs, flour, butter, sugar, mix it all together, pop it in the oven, and you get nothing that's going to win you the bake-off. There is no handshake that's going to be given to me by poor Hollywood for this disaster, basically. It's a very flat-looking, very standard-looking sponge cake. It smells delicious, but you wouldn't want to serve that if you're having a big celebration. So we're going to make this now look stunning. Now, traditionally, you could use a buttercream. Lots of butter, lots of sugar, heavy based, and then you could smear that all over this as the base for your artwork, which we're going to come on to in a minute. But I much prefer to use something lighter on a summer cake, so I've gone with this vanilla coconut yogurt. Now, this is great, especially if you've done a vegan bake and you've got people that don't eat eggs or dairy. It's a good alternative, but it's a nice thing to smear all over the sponge. I'm going to start just by giving it a little stir in its tub and spooning it just like that, dollop, dollop, on top of the sponge. Now, good couple of dollops, and then taking a little plastic or a little metal implement, a little cake smearer I like to call them. You just want to push that all over. You can either just do the top or you can do the sides too. I suppose it depends on how much you like a frosting. But like I said, this is kind of light, so if you were doing a buttercream, I'd probably only do the top. But with this yoghurt, you can actually make it stretch all over the sides. And because I am the world's worst baker, I really am not good at cakes. I am a great cook and an inventive cook, but there is a science to baking. So unless you're wondrous in that department, I'm going to cover up my messy edges and make it look fabulous. Coming in then to our decoration selection. Look at that, a gorgeous smorgasbord of colours. I'm going to work around from the edge coming into the middle, and what I want to start with are the very final things that we saw in our film, these little red sorrel flowers. Now to strip those off, you just pull them away from their stems and sprinkle them. They're almost like nature's hundreds and thousands. You know those little sweeties you get in plastic jars, coloured with God knows what? Well, this is something you can do in its place. Edible, natural, vibrant wild colour. Nothing nasty in there at all. And what that would do is give you little sharp, lemony-like apple bursts in the mouth. And that will work really well with that yoghurt. Oh, it's going to be so nice. Right, so there you go. That's that bit done. Now, I want to have these campion flowers. Now, campion flowers, you must be careful. At this time of year, you quite often see something called a campion aphid, which is like a little black beetle that can crawl up and underneath the bladder. So just give them a check. They'll run off quite quickly in your basket when they realise that they're not attached to the plant. Guys, remember they can be incredibly sweet, campion flowers, as sweet as candy. And actually, in the 20th century, a really popular recipe was to boil campion flowers with oranges and lemons and sugar in a pan and have that as a hot beverage, or to be poured over things like cakes or ice creams and things. I'm going to fit another one on there. Lovely. Right, coming then, I want to make a splash of different colour. I want to put my blue little speedwell flowers on here, just to give a contrast. So another little speedwell there. They used to say to children that if they picked speedwells out of the grass, that a bird would come and peck their eyes out. They also used to say with the campion flowers that if you picked them, you would be bitten by a rattlesnake. But then another piece of plant lore says that if you take the campion seeds, it would cure a snake bite. So it just goes to show that these oral stories get passed along, pieces of information get mislaid, a bit like gossip. When you hear gossip, sometimes it's maybe stemmed from some truth but skewed along the way, and a new story emerges. There you go, another blue. Right, so I've got my blues, I've got my pinks. Right, I want to go for these gorgeous, big, fat Turkish Delight Rugosa rose petals. So I'm going to, working in, place those on like hearts. So there's some hearts. Right, now I also have my forget-me-nots. Don't want to forget those beautiful little flowers. Forget-me-nots can be tricky to pull off. They're very small and very fragile, so I would tend to pull off 3 or 4 flower heads at a time. Obviously, if you're being very fussy, you could pull them off individually, but I quite like them like that. They're like the little posies, like that German folk tale, a posy being presented to his true love. Right, I've got some dandelions here. Now, I didn't talk about dandelions in the film. I picked them as we walked back towards the dome. But dandelions are great. I don't need to tell you about dandelions. We've spoken about them plenty before. But it's another colour to add on top. You know, think about all the beautiful colours in the hedgerow. How many can you get onto the cake to represent May? Another thing I want to put on are some of our spearmint leaves. That may seem odd, but I really like the taste of mint with that fresh lemony sorrel, and obviously we've got that coconut flavour in the yoghurt. So I think it would be nice just to put some of these green spears, if you remember the spears of the spearmint, along the edges. Right, so, oh, and I pinched out of my friend's garden just on the way past a forage flower. Just don't tell him. Pop that one on top. Right, so that is our cake so far. Moving on then to some cocktails. Thirsty work is decorating a cake. So, yesterday I went out and I picked some mint and I pre-made this wonderful spearmint cordial. Now, spearmint cordial is so easy to make. In fact, it will be teaching you to suck eggs to do it in front of you now. Very, very easy. You take your spearmint, your sprigs, you pop them into your saucepan, you cover them with about an inch of water, as much sugar as you like. Now, if you like a really sweet liqueur, then go heavy on the sugar. If you like just a mild sweetness, obviously just a little bit. Bring that to a rolling boil, let it infuse, and then strain it into a container of choice, and that is your cordial. So that is our syrup number one. So I've pre-made the mint, give myself some time, and I want to make a Turkish delight. I want to make something sweeter and more floral. So I'm going in with these lovely Rugosa rose petals. So they are going into my pan. I'm putting those in now, just like this. And I'm going to add a little splash of water and a little bit of sugar. And I can just smell those as I'm putting them into the saucepan, that beautiful flavour. They were used as pot puree a long time ago and dried and put into ladies' underwear drawers to give a nice floral scent to your pants. We are going to put them in our dish. I'm also popping in our campions, because our campions are going to give not only colour leached into the syrup, but also, again, if I remember if I said, when the pollinators haven't been in there before you, you get that natural sweet nectar in the bladder. So in they go. Now ideally, I'd like some more Rugosa rose. I've got some in here. As strong as you can get it, I find, is better. Pop those in there, like that. Take these pinks off the desk. Right. Now, a little splash of water. Now I'm going to use this soda water. You could just use tap water. Doesn't matter what you have, you just want enough really to cover no more than an inch. So if you can see that to camera, it's all fizzing away in there. And we're going to just gently heat those now. So you want to apply some heat. You don't want to boil them to death, but you just want to get all those flavours infusing with a drop of sugar. So caster sugar, you could use granulated sugar, whatever you've got in the cupboard. Don't rush out and buy something if you've already got it. You just want a sweetener. Now I've got a sweet tooth and I like a sweet liqueur, so I put a fair amount in there. I'm just going to let that gently simmer. So whilst that's doing that, we need to make some straws for our cocktails. So we need to get into our basket and find our cow parsley spears. I put over here, bring those out. Now I've got several guests coming for this, but I will just make a few to show you now. And it's quite fun as well to get your guests to go out and pick their own cow parsley, make sure they've identified it correctly, and then get them to make their own drinking straws, all part of the party fun. I'm going to chop that. But don't worry if you get one and it's not got a complete hole going all the way through the middle, because you can always get a skewer and just push it down, making sure it comes out the other side. Nothing worse than having a blocked drinking straw when you're trying to get your gin in your mouth. So push that through. That's given me a nice hole all the way through. That's lovely, that's a nice straw. That can go there. Syrup's coming to the boil. Oh, I wish you could smell what I could smell now. It's just like Turkish Delight. I can't explain it in any other way. We all know what Turkish Delight or rose water smells like. These Rugosa petals give us a really strong bouquet. And actually the campion flowers, as the colours leached out into this syrup, they've gone a kind of violet indigo colour, which is actually really pretty. I'm going to turn it off now. I think I want to retain that colour. I'll see if I can hold one up to camera, because it really is quite astonishing, the colour change. So it's gone from a pink into almost a turquoise emerald green. It's really cool. Right, so that's in there. So I'm going to pour this out into a little jug. Trying not to burn my fingers. Oh, that is delicious. I'm going to sit and let that cool, because I don't want to put a hot syrup into a nice cool cocktail. So that one's going to go there. I'm not going to strain the flowers. The flowers will be nice in the cocktail glass and add another colour and dimension. So that's that one. Right, now what I want to do is cut up some limes and some sorrel leaves. So we picked our common sorrel when we were picking the red flower spikes. Just find them all on the board. Okay. Now I want to just move those there. And I'll move the cake so that you can see what I'm doing without dropping it on the floor. Let's move it up here and out of the way. Okay. So on the board, get your sorrel leaves. Now this is going to create the sugared rim around the cocktail glass. So we're going to take them and just chop them up as small as you can. Give them a rough chop. And then taking a little plate, pop those on. More sugar. Sprinkle those onto the sorrel leaf. Like that. And then using your fingers, make sure your hands are nice and clean, you just want to squeeze the leaves into the sugar, releasing all that oxalic acid that the sorrel leaves have, and that juice will be pushed out into the sugar granules. In fact, those sorrel leaves can be a little bit smaller. Just remember, they're going to be lining the edges of a glass. You don't want too chunky a bit. Right, lovely. Right, so first cocktail. I want to use my spearmint cordial. I want to take a nice looking glass. I'm going to use this little crystal glass. I need to cut a lemon. And what you want to do is make sure that the rim of your glass is wet with that lemon juice. Now, if you didn't like lemon, you could just use water. But I like to use a lemon. It works well with the sorrel. And that should stick to the rim of your glass. Okay. Okay, now we want to get our spearmint cordial. And next is an alcohol of your choice. I, with this one, particularly like gin. So this is just a really basic, unbranded, cheap as you like, neat gin. Top that up with a little bit of soda water. Like so. Now you could shake your cocktails. I like them stirred. So I'm going to stir that round like this. Now I want to make that glass look fabulous. A little bit of lemon inside. A few of our beautiful wild flowers. Now let's see, we put lots of them on the cake. We've still got some beautiful little speedwell flowers here. We're going to drop those just into the top. That one's gone upside down. Oh, we've got lovely forget-me-nots here. Definitely want some of those sprinkled on the top. And some of these ones here. Oh, lovely. And I want a pink. Now the trouble with campions is if you leave them for too long, they can start to wilt. So do keep that in mind. Do have a nice... It's quite good if you take a little Tupperware and put a damp tea towel or a damp kitchen towel in the bottom, then lie your wildflowers on top and put them in the fridge, and that will just make them last a little bit longer. And I want a sprig of mint. Oh, lovely wild spearmint on the side, like so. Stay on, stay on. And then our lovely wild straw. And that is our cocktail number 1. So if I hold that up to the light, and you can see this is my Spearmint cordial gin cooler with my sorrel sugared rimmed glass, edible flowers and my cow parsley drinking straw. So that will be lovely with a slice of wild cake. And indeed it is. Oh, that's delicious. Pop that one down there. Moving on then to number 2, very quickly. I'm going to take a bigger glass, a goblet, and I'm going to get my rose cordial. I'm going to just pop that in. Look at that. It's like a goldfish bowl of wonder. It's still warm. Ideally you'd like it cold, but I'm doing this to film. Oh, I could just drink that neat as it is. This is a really nice thing to pour over ice cream. So if you've got a vanilla ice cream and you pour over that rose syrup, it's absolutely delicious. Vermouth. Now this is a cheap vermouth. That's going to have a splash in there. I find that works really nicely with the rose. And this time I'm going in with my basic vodka. Splash of that. Probably don't have too many of these in the afternoon. Go. And I'm going to pop in a few more of the forage flowers that I kindly harvested from my friend's garden. Like that. I'm going to pop in some dandelion blossom. It's going to be almost like having fireworks exploding on top. There you go. Look at that. Lovely, lovely. Let's go in with a funky umbrella this time. Oop. Cool. It's inside out. Pop you on there. And I want... Oh, did I use all my roses in the drink? What can we find instead? Definitely need something pink to represent those colours in the syrup. We've got some the campion flowers. Float that one on top. And again, we want to top that up with some soda. Boop. And that is my Rugosa rose and campion vodka vermouth chaser. So I'll pop that one just there. So it's so simple to make the cheapest of drinks look beautiful just with the edible wild blossoms of May served with a nice chunk of cake. I can't think of a better way to say thank you to everyone that's been involved in my project so far.